Okay, so I have a question for you. When you hear that phrase, "you've been served," what's the first image that pops into your head?
Oh, it's definitely something from a movie.
Right. I'm willing to bet it's straight out of a Hollywood montage. You're picturing a guy in like a fake pizza delivery uniform, maybe jumping over a hedge, kicking down a door.
Slapping the papers on someone's chest.
Exactly. And then sprinting away while some dramatic music swells. It's all high drama, it's action packed.
It makes for great cinema, doesn't it?
Hmm.
But if we're looking at the reality based on this stack of documents we have today, that image is about as accurate as using a cartoon to understand, I don't know, quantum physics.
That is the perfect analogy, and it's exactly the disconnect we're going to fix today. We are peeling back the curtain on the actual grinding logistical machinery of process serving.
Yeah, we've gone through the internal service agreements, all the pricing structures, the whole logistical breakdown of a company called Lafayette Process Servers, LLC. They cover the entire state of Louisiana.
And to add some, human color to all that paperwork, we've also got transcripts from the Paper Trails podcast featuring an industry veteran, a guy named Scott Frank. And what we found is, what's really surprising.
It's not a cops and robbers kind of industry at all, is it?
Not even close. What struck me is that it feels more like a tech startup that got mixed up with a logistics company. It's highly regulated, incredibly specific, and frankly, a little expensive.
That's the perfect way to frame it. It's not about disguises. It's about, like, density, algorithms, and super strict legal compliance. So you should think of it less like a spy movie.
And more like Uber.
Exactly.
Yeah.
More like Uber, but the passenger is a lawsuit, and the destination is a person who, usually really doesn't want to be found.
So our mission today is to unpack this whole invisible infrastructure. We're going to look at the hub model they use to make the math work across an entire state, the brutal economics of what I'm calling the attempt economy, which is a concept that just blew my mind, and the very real safety risks involved when your entire business is just delivering bad news to strangers.
It's the physical on switch for the justice system.
Yeah.
It really is. It's the one piece of the legal world that you can't fully digitize. So, yeah, let's get into it.
I want to start with the user experience. So let's say I need to sue someone. I've got my papers ready. I always assumed I'd just, call a guy and maybe meet him in a parking lot somewhere.
Yeah, hand him a manila envelope full of cash.
Right. Go get him. But looking at the Lafayette Process Servers documentation, that is not how this works at all.
No, the days of the handshake deal are, they're largely over,
Mhm.
at least for professional firms operating at this scale. The documentation we have, it outlines this rigid, almost unforgiving digital portal system.
A board.
Yeah, you have to create an account, upload all your documents as PDFs, sign a digital service agreement. It's all very transactional. It feels a lot closer to ordering takeout or booking a flight than it does hiring a private investigator.
But there was one specific rule in that whole ordering process that seemed incredibly pedantic to me at first. They call it the name match rule.
Okay.
And they put this in bold. I think there was even a warning emoji next to it in the source text. It says the name and the email on the service agreement must match the name and email in the portal. Exactly.
Right.
Why that obsession with that one detail? Is it just like bad software design?
It really looks like bureaucratic red tape.
Yeah.
But if you dig a little deeper into the legal context, it's actually a critical safeguard. It's all about the chain of custody.
Ah, okay.
You have to remember, the product this company sells isn't just delivering paper. The real product is the affidavit.
Right, the proof.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The sworn statement that will stand up in court saying, I serve this person.
Hmm.
So if the person who digitally signed the contract isn't the same digital identity as the one who uploaded the documents,
A good defense attorney would have a field day with that.
oh, they'd tear it apart. They could argue, how do we know who actually initiated this? How do we know the documents weren't tampered with between the upload and the print job? They're trying to bulletproof the evidence before a server even turns the key in their car.
That's a great point. They're not just selling delivery. They are selling evidence. And speaking of selling, we have to talk about the money because the pricing model here is fascinating and honestly a little harsh if you're not expecting it.
It is strictly prepaid invoice.
Yes, the source material is so adamant about this. It says, service does not start until the money clears. 0 credit extended.
And they have that policy about checks, which really highlights how cash flow conscious they are. If you pay by check, they just stop the clock. No attempts are made until that physical check arrives and actually clears the bank.
Which brings us to the biggest realization I had reading all this. You are not paying for a result. You're not paying for service completed.
Yeah.
You are paying for the effort.
We should just call it the attempt economy. The disclaimer is crystal clear. Fees cover the attempt to serve and are non-refundable.
So if the person has skipped town, or the address you gave them is a vacant lot, or if they just never answered the door after 3 tries,
Your money is gone.
that feels rough for the client, doesn't it? You could pay hundreds of dollars and get absolutely nothing back but a report that says, "We tried."
It is harsh, but think about it from the business owner's perspective. The server has to spend money to do the job. You've got gas, vehicle wear and tear, hours of labor.
Yeah.
If they only got paid if they succeeded, they'd go bankrupt immediately. Some people simply cannot be found.
Right.
The server can't be expected to subsidize the client's bad data.
It's like buying a lottery ticket where the prize is just notifying someone they're getting divorced. You pay for the ticket whether you win or not.
And the house always takes its cut. And speaking of cuts, did you catch the convenience fees?
I did. I actually laughed out loud at that. 6% for credit cards or ACH. That is steep. Usually you see, what, 3% at a retail store? Maybe 4 if it's an Amex. But 6%.
It suggests two things to me. One, they're operating on really thin margins and they just refuse to eat that processing cost. Or two, process serving is categorized as a high-risk merchant category by the banks, which means the credit card companies charge them higher rates because of the nature of the business. Chargebacks, disputes, fraud. It's probably a mix of both.
So they're just passing 100% of that friction cost directly to the client.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's look at the menu. You've paid your non-refundable fee plus your 6% surcharge. What are you actually buying? The menu of services is tiered almost exactly like FedEx or UPS.
It's all about urgency. You have the standard service at $120. That buys you up to 3 attempts, and the first attempt will happen within 5 days, so 120 hours. It's the ground shipping of the legal world.
And then, of course, you have the rush option.
Right. The price jumps to $200. You still get the 3 attempts, but the velocity changes. The first attempt happens within 24 hours. So you're paying an $80 premium just to cut the line.
But what really gets you, and this is where that logistics company comparison really shines, are the add-ons.
Oh, yeah.
We talk about hidden fees with airlines, like paying for a carry-on or extra legroom, but this industry has them too. I was staring at the printing fee, 65 cents per page.
It sounds trivial, right?
Yeah,
Until you see a
yeah.
really complex lawsuit.
Exactly. So I did the math on this. Let's say you have a commercial litigation complaint. Those things can easily be 100 pages long. And let's say you have to serve 3 different defendants.
Okay, so it's 300 pages of printing.
At 65 cents a pop, you are looking at $195 just in toner and paper fees. That's almost double the cost of the actual service.
It's a huge revenue stream for them. But it's also a reminder that despite the digital portal, this is a physical business. Someone has to stand at a machine, collate the papers, staple them, prepare them for 3 different targets. That time is billable. They're not running a charity print shop.
They also list some services that sound a bit more investigative. This is where we sort of drift back toward the movie stuff, but the pricing brings you right back down to earth. They list skip tracing and stakeouts.
Skip tracing is basically digital detective work. For a flat fee, $25 for basic or $85 for comprehensive, they run these database searches to find a new address for someone who's being evasive. It's leveraging big data to find people who've gone off the grid.
But the stakeout service, that is where the reality of the labor just hits home for me. It's listed at $120 per hour with a 4-hour minimum.
Yeah, think about what that actually entails. You are paying a human being $480 minimum just to sit in a car. And remember, this is Louisiana. It is hot, it is humid, and if you're on a stakeout, you probably can't run the engine the whole time if you want to remain inconspicuous.
So you're just sweating through your shirt, staring at a front door, probably peeing in a bottle, waiting for someone to walk out.
It's expensive boredom. That's what it is. It totally de-glamorizes the whole concept. In the movies, a stakeout is where the partners bond and eat burgers and solve the case. In reality, it is just a very, very expensive way to wait.
And it shows that information is the most expensive commodity here. Knowing where someone is costs $25. Waiting for them to be there costs $480.
Precisely. The scarcity is the physical presence.
Now, let's zoom out to the logistics. Louisiana is a big state, right? It has a lot of swamps, bridges, rural roads. How does one company cover the whole thing without just spending a fortune on gas?
They use what they call a hub system, and this is pure supply chain strategy. The source material lists specific standard rate zones. Lafayette, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Lake Charles. These are the population centers.
So if the address is in one of those cities, you get the standard price.
Correct. And in that Paper Trails podcast transcript, Scott Frank explains this distinction so vividly. He talks about how serving papers in a city is standard business, but serving them down a dirt road in a rural parish is a completely different ballgame.
I love that imagery. Down a dirt road in a rural parish. It's the difference between a paved street with streetlights and a place where you might get your car stuck in the mud or, have no cell service.
Economically, it is all about density. In a hub like New Orleans, a server can potentially hit 4 or 5 addresses in a single afternoon. The cost per serve drops because they're all clustered together. But if you have to drive 2 hours into the backwoods for one paper,
The unit economics just collapse.
they do.
So if I need to serve someone in the middle of nowhere, say deep in North Louisiana,
Then you trigger custom pricing. The agreement explicitly states that anything outside those hubs is quoted on a case-by-case basis. It's essentially surge pricing for the legal system. Distance equals time, and time is the inventory they're selling.
right, they have agents in those hubs to minimize the driving, but once you leave the hub, the meter starts running.
Exactly.
I want to circle back to the myths we started with, that whole kicking down the door idea. Scott Frank, he addresses this directly in the podcast transcript. He says clients actually asked for it.
They do. And it makes sense if you think about the emotional state of the client. They're angry, they're hurt, they feel wronged. They want the server to be their avenging angel.
They want them to do whatever it takes, trespass, lie, break into a gated community.
And Scott's response is just a firm no.
It has to be, right? But is that just morality? Or is it a business decision?
It's survival, 100%. Scott explains that process serving is bound by the Louisiana Code of Civil Procedure. If a server serves someone illegally, say, by jumping a fence they shouldn't have or misrepresenting themselves as a police officer, the service is invalid.
A judge just throws it out?
Throws it right out. So the client effectively sabotages their own case by trying to be too aggressive. They lose the money they paid, they lose weeks of time, and they have to start all over.
So the process server's reputation is their currency.
It's everything.
Yeah.
If a judge knows a specific company cuts corners, their affidavits become worthless paper. The server has to be the adult in the room and say, I know you want me to kick that door down, but for your own sake, I'm just going to knock.
There's another legal quirk in the documents that I found surprisingly complex. The special process server rule. Apparently, you can't just hire anyone for any court in Louisiana.
This is a very specific jurisdictional detail that varies from parish to parish. In a lot of places, any adult not involved in the case can serve papers. But the source material notes that for some local Louisiana courts, you need a signed motion and order from a judge just to appoint the private server.
A motion and order? That sounds serious.
It is. It means you have to formally ask the court for permission to hire the guy to deliver the papers. It essentially deputizes that private citizen for that one specific case, making them an officer of the court for a brief moment.
Wow.
It maintains the sanctity of the legal process. It's a reminder that this isn't just a courier service. It's an extension of the court's authority.
Which segues perfectly into the risks because while they aren't kicking down doors, they are walking up to strangers who are often having the absolute worst day of their lives.
The officer safety clause in the service agreement is it's chilling in how practical it is. It says the client is required to disclose any known criminal history, violence, or weapons regarding the recipient.
It's mandatory disclosure. You can't just send a server into a lion's den without a warning.
And notice they also require a photo ID of the subject. If you don't have one, they'll charge you to source one from the DMV. They need to know exactly who they are approaching. They don't want to hand papers to the wrong guy, but they also really need to know if the guy they were looking for has a history of assault.
It really highlights the human element, We talk about portals and PDFs and standard rate zones, but at the end of the day, this job is about physical confrontation, controlled confrontation, professional confrontation, but still.
Confrontation nonetheless. Scott Frank alludes to this when he talks about the need for patience. You have to de-escalate. You have to be professional. But the risk is always there. You're handing someone proof that they're being sued or losing custody or facing foreclosure. People react unpredictably to that kind of stress.
So how do they prove they actually did it? I mean, if I'm a client in New York and I hire these guys in Louisiana, how do I know the server didn't just dump my papers in a ditch and say, attempt made?
And that is where the tech comes back in. The source material includes a testimonial from an attorney, Jason R., who specifically praises the GPS time-stamped update.
The real deal, he calls them.
That GPS stamp is the modern version of a witness. It proves the server's device was at that specific latitude and longitude at that specific time. It protects the server from claims that they never showed up, which happens all the time. People say, I was home all day, nobody knocked. And it protects the client by proving diligence to the court.
It's trust but verify, backed up by satellites.
Exactly. And speaking of the business ecosystem, did you notice the sponsorship mentioned in the podcast transcript? 337 Media.
I did. A local SEO and web design firm. 337 is the area code for Lafayette, right?
That's the one. It's a small detail, but it tells you something really important about the industry. Even a gritty, boots-on-the-ground, business-like process serving relies entirely on digital visibility.
That's a great point.
If a lawyer in New York needs to serve someone in Baton Rouge, they're going to Google it. They are not looking in the yellow pages anymore. If you don't have good SEO, you don't get the job. So you have this very old-school profession-handing paper to people that is completely dependent on new school marketing to survive.
It's a fascinating blend of the digital and the physical. So let's pull all this together. Why does this matter? Why should our listener, who hopefully isn't suing anyone or being sued right now, care about the mechanics of how a piece of paper travels from point A to point B?
Because it is the invisible infrastructure of our rights. I mean, we have these high-minded ideals about justice, due process, the right to face your accuser. We learn about them in civics class. But none of that happens without this logistical layer.
The lawsuit doesn't even start until the paper lands.
Exactly. A divorce can't be finalized, a witness can't be compelled to speak, a debt cannot be collected unless a human being physically delivers a document to another human being. It operates as a private for-profit business, but it serves a deeply public function.
It's the spark plug of the legal engine. If it fails, the whole car just doesn't start.
And it's so stubbornly analog. We live in this era of instant digital notification.
Yeah.
I know if my Uber driver takes a wrong turn instantly. I get an email if someone logs into my Netflix account from a new device. I can track my pizza from the oven to my door.
And yet, when the stakes are at their absolute highest, when your property or your freedom is on the line, the system demands a face-to-face encounter.
That's the paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't just email a summons. You can't DM someone a lawsuit. You have to look them in the eye.
That is the thought I want to leave everyone with today. We talked about the stakeout service earlier. In a world of facial recognition, high-tech surveillance, and digital footprints everywhere, the legal system still sometimes requires a person to sit in a hot car for 4 hours, costing $120 an hour, just waiting for someone to walk out their front door so they can hand them a stack of paper.
It's a necessary, messy human anchor in a digital world.
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the paper trails of the legal world. We hope you never need to use these services, but if you do, now you know exactly what you're paying for.
Stay safe out there.
We'll see you on the next one.